Chapter 7. It took Rue a time to make sense of the scene. The two figures sat opposite each other, and the light seemed to spring off their flickering fingers. The wispy orbs would then circle high above the table before plunging into a dive like hunting hawks. Rue's eyes narrowed. The lights were striking two small, moving figures on the table. What were they? Kriska? No, smaller than that. The boy leaned closer, his face almost pressed against the glass. They were little dolls. One had a helmet, shield and spear. The other was made of sackcloth, with a great button for an eye, and they were fighting. They were alive, leaping and spinning, attacking and defending. The wispy light swirled around them in greens, blues and reds. The fighting was fierce, the soldier doll's spear flashing as he thrust out from behind his round shield, the one-eyed doll swaying and ducking as he avoided the attacks, almost dance-like in his movements. It did not seem like a fair encounter to Rue. The soldier doll was well armed and made of iron, while the other one had no weapons, just arms made of sackcloth. However, he fought gamely. He spun away from a spear thrust and rolled across an upraised shield. He continued the spin until he was behind the startled soldier. In one smooth movement, he leapt and thrust out both feet, hitting the armoured doll squarely in his back. The soldier staggered forward, but regained his balance. It turned and crouched behind its shield, advancing more warily. The man behind the little soldier nodded in appreciation. "He fights well." The other one shrugged, their features hidden beneath a ragged hood. "He cannot hurt you, though." It was a woman's voice, and it had a strange accent, where each word came out like a hiss. Rue took a closer look. The big one was a warrior. A great sword was propped up against the chair behind him. He wore a huge black fur cloak that, along with his long shaggy hair and thick beard, gave him a bear-like quality. The woman was slim, with a large splayed hood that reminded Rue of a swaying serpent. The pale skin of her hands caught Rue's attention. They weren't pretty hands. The knuckles were calloused and scarred. He realized that they hovered over some sort of board. Rue's eyes darted between the two of them. Both had a board, divided into a grid of coloured squares that glowed softly in reds, blues and greens. Above the board floated a handful of coloured tiles. It was these small square tiles that they played with, sliding and pulling them across the board, their fingers flicking and swiping at astonishing speeds. The snake woman slid a red wooden tile, and it rested over one of the softly glowing red squares of the board. The light pulsed, and a strand of it leapt off the board and swirled around the one-eyed doll before infusing it with colour. The doll surged forward, hitting the other's shield hard and forcing him back a few steps. The big man grunted. His hands moved quickly across the board, and the blue and green lights leapt from below his fingers, filling the soldier doll. This seemed to steady it as the one-eyed doll pressed his attack. The soldier doll stopped his retreat, absorbing the kicks of his attacker. More light filled him, this time swirls of powerful red, and he surged forward rapidly, thrusting his spear. The one-eyed doll dodged two of them, but the third one caught him squarely in the chest. The doll sagged and fell, and the woman's board went dark. Her opponent's board, in contrast, pulsed powerfully, casting long shadows across the room. The soldier doll stood triumphantly over the fallen sackcloth doll. Both the man and the woman seemed disappointed. The soldier doll bowed to the hooded woman and then marched back to the bear-like warrior to stand guard by the strange board. "So, nothing?" the big man asked. "Nothing," agreed the woman. "The tiles are not special. The totem is poorly made." "He has courage, though." "Yes, he fights within range of your spear. Very brave, very strange technique." The woman leaned back with a sigh, her face in the hood shadows. "But a wasted venture, Cord. Remember why we are here." Cord folded his arms. "The investigation." He sighed. I see little point. People die here all the time, Rin. Especially those that cross the lady.
Even so, we must investigate. Magnus was one of us, not easy to kill.
Aye, to survive the construct war, then die to a common assassin. There is little justice in that.
Magnus. Rue recognized the name. It was the noble who had been assassinated.
The woman called Rin continued.
Perhaps not just a common assassin, Cord. There are many rumors. Wizards are being looked for. Bull's hoods seek them out. The Chris King stirs. WHISP players going underground.
Cord raised an eyebrow.
Well, more underground,
said Rin with a shrug. Cord shook his head. Wizards have always been hunted down. And most of us are not immortal. We die just like the No-Kos. It happens. Even if it is a sign he has returned, we should be readying our defences anyway. We need to find the 6. Rin sighed. It was obviously an argument they had been through before.
A fool's quest. 50 years without a sign. You do not even know what they look like.
She glanced at Cord's pack.
You might already have them. You have collected so many.
The warrior shrugged uncomfortably.
Right now, our task is to investigate,
said Rin simply. We are not investigators. I have no idea why Elsa sent us.
I can investigate. I can be subtle.
Cord glanced at the woman's brutal hands. Black scars crisscrossed her forearms. She noted his glance.
More subtle than a giant bear man with big sword anyway, she said.
Cord smirked but said nothing, his eyes fixed on the table. His doll glanced up as the silence hung thick in the air. Eventually Rin sighed.
I will continue investigation. Talk to the wizards we know.
The warrior shook his head grimly at that. Nothing will come of it. They are just scared old men.
You will come?
Cord shrugged. No, I'll go through his tower. See what I can find.
So you will help me?
I owe Magnus that much. He paused in consideration. You know, there is one person in this town that knows everything that goes on in it. Rin cocked her hooded head.
You are talking of the Chris King, yes?
Well, he would know.
The never found Chris King? The legendary Chris King? I just find him and I just ask him?
Well, it was just a thought.
A very strange, impossible one.
Rin turned and left the light of the overhanging lantern. Her dark figure paused at the door.
But I will think on it. I wish you luck, Cord.
You too. The warrior nodded as the woman left the tavern. Rue ducked down behind a barrel as Rin stood in the middle of the street, hesitating and casting a look back at the tavern door. She muttered something in a strange language, and then continued down the road, disappearing into the mist. Rue slowly stood from his crouch and looked back through the window. The bear man sat there for a long time, lost in his thoughts, his soldier doll standing vigil over the hunched figure. Then he turned to the window. You might as well come in, lad, Cord said gruffly. The streets are not safe. The end of Chapter 7. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed that, please leave me a generous tip of 1 like, and may the Chris King watch over you. And if you want to know when the next chapter comes up, please subscribe and hit that notification button. Thank you very much again, and I'll catch you later. Bye.